Abominaire here with a quick video about showing you how to use Galacticraft for long distance item transportation. Now let's get started. We're going to head over here and check our rockets. What? Yeah, no, I was just about to introduce you. Don't be mad, don't turn your back on me. Look, okay, everybody, this is Ted. Ted's also from the Galacticraft mod. He's going to be my helper today and kind of help us see how this works. Stop being mad. I'm sorry. No, I can't recut it. No, I've been doing this for like 5 hours. I'm not going to start over. Alright, let's get over here. Now, in order for us to have this system work, we're going to need a few things. First, we're going to need to generate power to run our machines on our launch pad. Secondly, we're going to also need a rocket. That one just took off, but it should be back shortly. Cargo rockets are attained by completing the final dungeon in Mars on the Galacticraft mod. Now, we're also going to need fuel. Galacticraft has its own built-in fuel system, but if you wanted to, you can actually go ahead and if you see, we can actually get us a bucket of Buildcraft's fuel and it'll actually load it up and it'll work as soon as there's a rocket back. Now, if we look over here, we're also going to need a launch controller. Launch controllers basically work similarly to wireless redstone, if any of y'all are familiar. With that mod, you'll basically set a main frequency to this launch pad, and then its home launch pad, you'll set another frequency to. These will basically be in reverse for that return pad. This tells it where it needs to go. You also have a few options as far as launching your rocket. You can base it off of how the cargo is looking, whether or not it's fueled, and basically set it up on a timer. But more interestingly enough, you can actually use redstone signal to activate it launching. So you can set up a few interesting systems if you're, say, using Project Red. You can actually set it up to say, get out of the fire, Ted. Come on, Ted. Stop trying to die on me. Alright. So like I was saying, you can use Project Red and create longer timing systems for this. Or, if you're, say, using logistics pipes, you could actually set up a remote order to fill up the cargo loader, and then the cargo loaders would load the items onto the rocket, and then you could use wireless redstone to actually launch that rocket manually or from a distance. That can be kind of cool too, without having to resort to a kind of a magic block item, sort of like Ender Chest or Tesseracts. Now, like I said earlier, you also need to use cargo loaders and unloaders, and you can set these up to load and unload items. Let's go ahead and turn this on. One bug I want to also point out before we get going here is on those launch controllers, these settings here don't always stick. So let's turn this off. Look away, look back. Yeah, it did stay. Sometimes it doesn't do that and it'll just stay red. The way you solve that is you just click it like a madman and then look away, and it should keep those settings. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a shortcut and we're going to go read our Mystcraft book so we can get back to the spaceport, and I'll cover everything else. Wait, what do you mean you can't read? Well, if you can't read, you can't travel through the Mystcraft, you can't get to the overworld. Well, who were your parents? How did they not teach you to read? Wait, I'm your parents? No, buddy. I found you. I don't know your mom. I wasn't that drunk. Well, I'm sorry. You can't go. How would you get there? You want me to use what? Mystcraft crystal portals? No, I told you what happened last time. Don't give me those eyes. Alright, we'll be right back. Alright, Ted. I finished the portal for you. Yeah, no, it's just down these metal tracks. Yeah, you need to be in it. It's momentum. You need the momentum to travel. Don't worry about it. Oh, well, that's nice. It wasn't too much trouble, just giant man-sized cows with halberds. But, yeah, man, here you go. Enjoy. Sucker. Alright, that should keep Ted busy for a while. Let's go ahead and finish showing you how the system actually works. Now, we're back here on the overworld in my main base. So over here you can see I've got my little spaceport that I'm building, and hopefully I'll get to expand it here a little bit later. But let's go ahead and make note of a few of these devices. So we already talked a little bit about it before, but you need to be able to generate power to run your your spaceport network. Now, the reason why it's really important to make sure your power system's set up correctly is if at any point we lose power to one of these systems, the whole thing starts to fail. We don't want to lose power to our fuel loaders, or else we won't be able to fuel our rockets. We need to make sure our items are actually being transferred, or else that would be a waste. But we really don't want to lose power to our launch controller. The reason for that is if we were to lose power and a rocket was mid-flight, we'd end up losing the rocket, and those rockets are pretty expensive. You're going to spend about 500 ingots worth of materials just to build one. So we definitely don't want to lose one of those. Now, another thing to make note of here is if you want to send resources two ways, you're probably going to want to go ahead and set up two launch pads. There's a more complicated way of doing this, but the easiest way is just get yourself two rockets. The reason for this is that if we were to say have both the loaders and the unloaders on the same pad, we'd be loading in resources and immediately taking them out, which would be completely useless. Now the cool thing about these is you can actually hook up just about any sort of pipes. You can use logistics, regular buildcraft, or even use, say, item ducts. Now I'm using logistics pipes for a specific reason. First off, there's a built-in lag to my network. I've got a pretty large base setup going here, and actually my resources, main storage, is all the way underneath my house. So it actually takes quite a bit of time for those items to transfer, and I'm using that to my advantage. Over here is the second part of it. The items I'm keeping stocked, I'm intentionally keeping these to be low numbers just to slow down how fast my rockets get loaded and unloaded. In this case, I'm actually just using this as a ratio. Since I'm having to wait for each load of these 7 items, I can kind of really control of how much of these I'm getting, especially if there's a slowdown in my fuel. In this case, since it's a ratio, for every 6 charcoal, I'm basically loading 1 capsule, as long as I can keep up with that slow pace. It helps build up an internal buffer to make sure you don't accidentally send a rocket missing important resources. It's not as easy as, say, setting up a set of ender chests, but I really think it adds some interesting gameplay. Now let's talk a little bit more about the power system of Galacticraft. It's a little wonky at best, but I'll kind of show you some of the ins and outs that I've figured out. Now, we can use, say, the built-in solar cells or the coal generators and generate power, but when it comes to wiring, since we're using the Universal Electricity API, it's not really designed in setting up big, large, complicated wiring networks. In fact, really, you're only meant to hook up maybe 1 or 2 machines to a power source. But since I've got all these different machines, I've had to expand it. Now, one of the things to be aware of is that each machine will use up all the power it's getting, whether or not it even actually needs it. So if you're sending in too much, the excess power gets wasted. Another thing that makes it a little more complicated is all these wires here actually have their own built-in energy storage. Reason for that is basically if you wanted to make really long networks, you're going to have to ship in extra power just so you can fill up all of these wires. Additionally, since these wires will slowly degrade the power that's in them, you're basically going to need more and more power for every line of wire that you want to run farther. Now, like I said, since it'll use up as much power as the wires will support, you really need to kind of pay attention to your power output. So this may be a little strange to y'all, but this is all set up in a parallel set of circuits. I'm using RF cells, which are also compatible, so is IC2 stuff, and so is Buildcraft and some and some other mods. Alright, so under here I've got my current work in progress of trying to figure out how the power system here works out better. One of the things that you need to make note of is that these machines, those launch controllers and unloaders, will eat up as much power as they're getting, and they'll actually continue to use power that they don't even need. So you need to be careful with how much power you're sending out. Additionally, these wires have a little built-in energy storage. So basically, these will absorb energy that I'm trying to send. So if I'm trying to make a really long, complicated network, I've got to actually fill up all of these with power. And since the power inside of them degrades over time, it kind of builds in a little bit of resistance and makes wiring a little bit of a pain if you're trying to do a large, complicated system. this is a really good time to note out that, if you may have noticed, thermal expansion, IC2, and Buildcraft are all actually, their power systems are all basically interchangeable and will run these systems. So you may want to think about doing something like that if you're going to try to recreate this. You can see even right now I'm cheating, trying to figure out some more ins and outs just to make these solar cells more than decorative use. Now, another thing to note is that we need to pay attention with how much power we're outputting. I'm using leadstone here, not because I'm resource poor, but because it's capping how much energy is coming out. These are all set up in a parallel style circuit, which basically means that the total amount of power I'm pushing through is actually really only 80 RF per tick. If I were to use the higher end cells, I'd be sending a whole bunch of extra power that would be wasted in these machines. So there's a few things for you all to keep in consideration, but honestly, later I'm probably just going to hook this up to my nuclear reactor and do it that way. These solar cells and even the stronger coal power furnaces really just don't seem to produce enough power to make a complicated system run. Alright, so now that we're done with power, let's talk a little bit more about what you can do with these. So we've already kind of pointed out the obvious. We can ship resources to and from, say, Mars or the Moon, all the way back to the overworld. But because Galacticraft is just using the same DIM system that Minecraft uses for its dimensions, that means all of these rockets can work in any dimension. Whether you wanted to send something from the overworld to the Nether, or the Nether to Twilight, or any of your Mistcraft ages, they're all going to work with the system. In fact, you can even ship resources to and from different locations in the overworld. So if you have a really cool biome that you want to exploit, but it's 3,000 blocks that way, you can handle it now. This isn't the easiest system to use. It's not the cheapest system to use. Magic blocks are still going to be easier and cheaper to use, but it's an interesting system that kind of gives you some interesting gameplay. Besides, it's been kind of cool watching all of these rockets come and go, giving me resources. Well, that does it for what I have to show y'all today. Thanks for watching my video.